back in 1999, Lexus launched the original RX 300. At the same time, it also launched the luxury crossover segment. Now back then, it was in a sea of one. Today, well, it's just in a sea of competition.
Today, of course, you'd be hard-pressed to find a brand that does not have a luxury subdivision. Whether that's your stalwarts like Mercedes, BMW, or Nissan with Infiniti, Honda with Acura, or in this case, Hyundai and Genesis. Genesis seems the most ambitious of these, and here with the GV70, we're putting this 2023 Lexus RX 350 hybrid up for a pretty tough fight.
So which of these luxury crossovers will win? Will it be the newbie, or will it be the granddad? We'll have the answer coming up. For now, L, RX 350 for you.
Enjoy the GV70.
You got it.
So straight off the bat, these cars are a fair bit more expensive than their predecessors, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And you know, in many respects, I understand why, because of the level of technology at play. But I also think that everybody's been gouging ever since COVID.
This is a painful reality, but yes, to be fair, there is a lot going on in both of these cars. Standard equipment now here in this RX 350h is their Safety Sense 3. That gets you the adaptive cruise, the lane keeping, the blind spot warnings, all sorts of stuff that makes your drive a whole lot easier. But Graham, I think you've probably got a slightly spiffier package over there in the Genesis, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this thing comes one way, and that's loaded to the nines. As with your Lexus, there's a full suite of safety aids, up to and including this thing. I managed to take my hands off the wheel for about 2.5 minutes while it did the driving. You're not supposed to. Just goes to show how far they've come and how close they're getting to a full autonomous drive. The other thing, the infotainment system in this Genesis, it can't touch the one you've got in that Lexus. I really appreciated the infotainment system in the Lexus far more than I did this 14-inch screen, because it's such a large letterbox, it's difficult to operate.
You are correct there. Though Genesis had the edge for a while, the new system that we're seeing in the latest Toyotas and Lexus products just blows everything else in the industry out of the water. We've got a very large, easy-to-use interface here. Everything is readily accessible. It's quite intuitive. You're seldom more than 2 taps away. The other nice thing too is the fact that this thing gets wireless CarPlay, whereas you still have to plug in over in that Genesis. What year is this?
Yes, you do. And you know, the funny thing is, I really appreciated that one of the things that makes the infotainment system in that RX is the voice control system. You say, hey Lexus, turn on the wipers. It turns on the wipers. Hey Lexus, I'm cold. It turns the heat up. It really is very, very simple, to the point where you really don't need to touch the touchscreen to do what you need to do.
With that being said, Lexus has gone a little overboard. When you start to get into the higher trimmed RX models, and really anything higher trim in the Lexus lineup, you now get these clever capacitive steering wheel control buttons. They're a nifty feature in concept. They're contextual, so you press the large button down below and you're able to change what set of menu options you're seeing. Then whatever you rub your thumb over appears up in the head-up display before you. It's really slick. It also is a little bit inconvenient in real-world applications. I would like to be able to tell just what my button is going to do without having to go through a multi-step process to identify it.
It seemed to me technology purely and simply for the sake of technology.
Yes, but conversely, the cluster here in the Lexus feels surprisingly old-fashioned. That is especially when compared to the one there in the Genesis. That 3D effect unit, which uses the infrared sensors to make sure that the distance to your face perfectly matches the way it is overlaid, those different layers, is really, really slick. And that's even before you get to the really clever turn signal blind spot cameras that are available in those higher trim models.
Yes, I agree. I really do like the stuff that appears in the instrumentation, purely and simply because you have a quick look in the mirror and it verifies there's nothing there. It is very clever technology. I remember when Honda had it long time ago, but it was only on the one mirror. Having it on both and showing it on either side of the dash really does make a great deal of sense.
Now, with all that tech out of the way, we come to another big strength of that Genesis over this here RX, which is the way that Genesis drives.
Absolutely. You know, turbocharging works, but in this case it works much better with 6 cylinders than it does with a hybrid with an electric motor. This thing really is very fast, it's very responsive, and it goes like the clappers. Now, the one thing I didn't like about the RX was the hybrid system. I detest CVTs at the very best of times, and for whatever reason, the one in that RX just seems to accentuate everything I hate about them.
Now, in fairness, most people who are buying an SUV in this class probably aren't going to be looking for an outright performance drive. The performance ceiling in that Genesis is definitely higher. If you option up the F Sport trims here in the Lexus, you do get some more goodies that do tighten things up a little bit. Chief among these is the adaptive suspension system, which does tighten the ride significantly. You also get all sorts of cosmetic bits. Those really are the bulk of the substance you see in those packages. There in the Genesis with the 3.5 liter engine as we've got equipped here, you've just got a whole lot more go right away. You've also got Hyundai's predictive suspension in the Sport and Sport Plus 3.5s. That makes a big difference on ride whether you're trying to be sporty or not. The drive here in the Lexus, well, you can probably hear that paltry little engine and the CVT just trying to chug away as I try to get up to 80 kilometers an hour here. It just isn't much, and it really leaves you wanting. It's all pretty dull, even as family crossovers go. Steering here is steering. There's no feel to any of it, but there doesn't really need to be. That said, that does really stand out as a weakness against what is a surprisingly responsive setup there in the Jenny.
Yes, they really did get things right. The steering, it's got a great on-center feel. It turns off linearly, and when you get into a corner, with thanks to the action of the all-wheel drive and everything else that's helping the cause, this thing really turns into a corner very crisply. I did find the RX to be a little lazy on turning, but having said that, you mentioned the S Sport. I'd go one further and mention the 500H with the adaptive suspension. Now, that thing would give this GV70 a very serious run for its money in just about every aspect, and that's from an engine perspective right the way through to a delightful set of driving dynamics.
This is an entirely valid point, but I will note that at the $80,000+ you're looking at for that there RX 500H, you're into pretty decent Porsche Macan money, and that really would sweep all of this. Bringing it back to these vehicles though, which setup really is the better for your money? Well, I think it is important to note that the trims we're driving are not the value or volume trims. In the Lexus, most people are probably going to be looking toward the luxury trim. That comes in at 65.8 Canadian, or if you're looking at the hybrid model, 67.3. There in the GV70, the 2.5 liter turbo Advanced Plus trim is probably the one that you'd want to look at first. That at 61.5 actually offers better fuel economy than you'll find in the base RX 350, not the hybrid, and comes with a whole lot more tech than you would find at the same price here in the Lexus.
Yes, I agree with you. If I were in the market, as much fun as I've had driving the V6, I'm not entirely sure that it's what I need or what most people need. I think that Turbo 4 is got, with 300 horsepower, it's got as much as anybody will ever need on a daily basis, and it is significantly better on fuel than the V6.
So where does all of this leave us? Well, here in the RX 350 hybrid, we are looking at that excellent 6-odd liter per 100 kilometer fuel economy. That is going to be one of the big decision drivers in this comparison. I would note that overall, while the materials aren't quite as nice, everything here in the Lexus does feel that bit better assembled, and better still, whereas that Genesis is built in Alabama, this here is built in Cambridge, Ontario. On top of that still, we've got that superior infotainment experience and the wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. With that being said, this generation RX has lengthened its wheelbase for more comfort in the back, but you can no longer get a third row. You're also looking at that less inspired drive, so it's not even full-size family friendly, nor is it exciting to drive. It's a pretty respectable commuter, but I can't say that it inspires me a whole lot beyond that. But such is the Toyota way.
Yes, I agree. You know, your high points I agreed with. Infotainment system is one of the best around. The cabin is a delight to live with on a day-to-day basis, and I really did enjoy, I don't know how you put it, the serenity of the drive, with the exception of that silly CVT. That CVT just spoiled the drive for me totally. I did appreciate the fuel mileage that it developed, however. The GV70, I love the speed, I love the agility, but you know what, in the end it came up lacking for me in a number of key areas. I wasn't a fan of the infotainment system. I'm not a fan of the suspension. It does do very, very good things and it keeps things on an even keel, but the one thing I did learn to dislike is the fact it doesn't do small sharp bumps very well. It tends to kick back quite a lot, and that in a luxury vehicle is not what you expect. That aside, I think we're on the same page.
Well, with that, let's head back and get our final thoughts.
You got it, El. I'll see you back at the base.
In the GV70 then, we're looking at greater performance, a more dynamic drive, and more compelling technology and feature content. Here in the Lexus RX 350h, we've got greater fuel economy. It is a far more responsible product. Were it my money, I'd be looking to lease the GV70 of these two, but buy the RX 350h. Given any choice across the segment though, for this kind of money, I would be looking at that GTI engine Porsche Macan T.
You know, Al, we're on the same page for the most part. I had far more fun driving the GV70 than I did the RX because I don't like CVTs. On the other hand, I really did appreciate the fuel economy, and you know, Grandad's not quite dead yet either. The RX 500h, I'd take that over this thing any day.
For Driving.ca, I'm Al Alder.
I'm Graham Fletcher.
For more new SUV news, reviews, previews, specs, and all the rest, be sure to follow us online on Driving.ca and check out our socials over on Instagram and Twitter.